What is something you've been hiding from your parents for years and will probably keep hiding in the future?
I did something similar to faking an illness. I didn't want to go to school because of bullying and looked up symptoms to fake an appendicitis. There was no pain, no problems, just my anxiety. The doctors weren't sure on the ultrasound echo, so they did surgery anyway. And it turned out to be a very severe case of appendicitis, which could have killed me in like 2 days if it hadn't been caught in time. My bullies saved my life, I guess? I used my dad's credit card to call a phone line under the name Johnny Appleseed. The charge showed us books. I remember him sitting at his desk going over his finances and yelling, "Who the is Johnny Appleseed? And why is he buying $700 worth of books on my credit card?" He never found out it was me. The call was super cringe and not worth it, but seeing his reaction to the charge on his account was. When I was 11, my mom was dating a man who worked at our local post office that we'll call Dave. My own father had died of cancer when I was 3, so Dave was the first person I ever chose to call Dad. He loved my mom, and he loved me and my sister like we were his own. One day, he takes us to a jewelry store and has us pick out rings for ourselves and help him pick out a ring for our mother. He told us when he was going to propose, and we had it all planned out. 3 days before the planned proposal, he died of liver failure, and we never told my mom what he was planning out of fear that it would break her heart. She never dated again, and she died thinking she wasn't good enough to be anyone's wife, which is a knife in my heart. I wish I had told her. When I was about 13 years old and my older brother was 16, he had just gotten his driver's license. He borrowed our mom's car one day and let his friend drive it around the neighborhood. Well, said friend saw me riding my bike down the street and thought it'd be funny to pretend to hit me. Except it wasn't funny because he actually hit me with my mom's car. According to my brother, he had apparently hit me hard enough to cause me to do a spin, and I was fortunate enough to land in the grass. So I managed to walk away with only some minor scrapes and bruises. I'm in my 30s now, and we still haven't told our mom. The year I turned 16, I got my license and snuck out that whole summer to make 4-hour round trips to see my boyfriend in the middle of the night. One of those nights, my door creaked super loud, and I saw her shadow sit up in bed across the hall. I could tell she was looking straight at my door. The entire house was dead quiet. I waited it out until I heard her snoring again, then left. This was about 17 years ago, and she still tells people about it and how that's when she started believing in ghosts. I have the funniest story about this. My boyfriend and I did this so much when we were around 17. My parents had several old bottles of hard liquor in the basement that they never touched, and I was 99% sure they had forgotten they were even there, since they'd been collecting dust for as long as I could remember. So we got through almost all of them over one summer, then filled them right back up with water. We were so stoked to have had all that easily accessible booze at a time when it was nearly impossible to get our hands on some. The following summer, I'm now 18, can drive 20 minutes to Quebec, we're in Ontario, to get alcohol legally, so it's no longer an issue. One day, I'm on a summer vacation with my family in the United States. We're browsing the duty-free shop when my dad points to a 40-ounce bottle of Jameson and says, "I have a completely full bottle of this in the basement from 1990. Well, no, Dad. You have a Jameson bottle full of water, actually. I immediately texted my boyfriend who was back home and told him he needed to go to Quebec ASAP and buy a 40-ounce bottle of Jameson and refill the bottle. I was sure my dad was gonna go looking for it when we returned, but as far as I know, he didn't and still hasn't. And I haven't told him his 1990 Jameson whiskey is actually now 2008 Jameson whiskey. Which, I mean, it could be worse. It could still be water, so. Passed out cold when I was 15. Mom took me to the emergency room and they said I was dehydrated. I was like, no, absolutely not. This felt wrong to me. Mom said, we'll just go home and stay hydrated. So I faked the second pass out because I knew something was terribly wrong. Went to see a neurologist, and sure enough, I had a golf ball-sized tumor on my brain. Probably won't ever tell my mom that I faked the second episode. I don't want her to feel bad. She's a great mom, and I don't want her to feel like she wasn't doing enough. It was 1997 to 1998. I was 17 to 18. Just out of school and working at my first full-time job at an abattoir with my old man, about 5 kilometers out of town. This one day I left early, going home sick. I got changed and grabbed Dad's car keys from his locker to go for a spin in his car, even though I had no license and little experience. As I intended to park it back in the same parking spot after a little fun, I called a mate to come meet me so I could get a lift to town. Within 10 to 15 minutes of gunning it down the road at ridiculously fast speeds and doing donuts on the grass and road intersections, I f***ed his car. Don't know what I did. Could have been the clutch. I don't know. All I knew was the car broke, it wasn't driving, and I'm in a ton of shit. We ended up towing the car back to work, into the same parking spot. I returned the keys to Dad's locker and got a lift into town. The old man jumped into his car after finishing at 1 a.m., only to discover his car somehow broke down and required a tow to the mechanics. To this day, I have never mentioned it, nor asked what the problem was. He's totally unaware that I did it. A few years ago, my brother made single-line drawings of all of our dogs as a gift. My mom just got a tattoo of hers, except it wasn't hers, it was one of mine. I guess I can kind of see how she thought it could have been her dog. I confirmed with my brother that it wasn't. This is a secret we have agreed to take to our graves. It was a really dumb oversight on their part, but it's permanently on my mom's forearm. We agreed telling them would just be cruel.
I threw a party 2 nights in a row while my parents were out of town when I was 18. First night was about 15 friends. Second night turned into about 90, most of which I didn't know. In a 6-house cul-de-sac, cars were double parked across driveways and a fight broke out in the front yard that included the discharge of a fire extinguisher. You get the picture. Obviously, the neighbors called the cops. Cops showed up and said that I needed to kick out everyone except those who couldn't safely drive, and they wouldn't contact my parents. So I did. Some assholes raided the liquor cabinet and stole about 8/5 of good liquor. The cops called my parents on Monday, but fortunately, they were still gone and they thought I was my dad. So I told them I would handle it. I replaced the liquor bottles as well as brought them close to the level they were at prior to the party. Thought I got off scot-free, except there was one bottle of scotch, and I had no idea what the brand was, so I replaced it with the wrong bottle. Dad noticed, but since the story I spun was believable, one of my friends pulled it out to drink it and left with it. I didn't get into too much trouble. That the pork intolerance I've had since I was 10 is 100% faked. My mom bought a 10-pound box of hot dogs that tasted nasty, and the constant thawing and refreezing did them absolutely no favors. But mom said I had to keep eating them until the box was gone. So I retrieved an old dish soap bottle from the trash, filled it with water and some lawnmower clippings, and hid it under the bathroom sink. Then, every time dinner was hot dogs, I'd take a couple bites, run to the bathroom, and squirt the rotting grass mixture into the toilet to fake like I was having diarrhea. Mom stopped making me eat the hot dogs after the 5th or 6th time. There are a few things, but the biggest one is probably when I had necrotizing fasciitis and lied to my parents about how quickly it spread. I got it when I was 9, and over time, I couldn't hide the limping anymore because it got to the point I couldn't even put my foot on the ground without it hurting. My family finally held me down and rolled my pants to my knee and saw how red it was. Hours later, they took me to the emergency room where I, of course, had to strip down, and suddenly it was near my groin. The doctors told me had I waited even a few more hours, I'd have died. My immune system fought for so long that when I was admitted to the hospital, they told me I had no immune system left. It was like that of a newborn baby. They called it a miracle. What nobody knows is I fought that thing for almost a month. It quietly spread over the course of a few weeks. I just did a damn good job at hiding it and avoiding questions. I'll take this to my grave. I only told 3 people in my life how long I actually had it for. But I'll never tell my parents because it was the scariest moment in their lives. They had to prepare that I would either die or lose my leg, all while the doctors kept the nature of my diagnosis as a secret because they didn't want to scare them.